Greetings, listeners. Welcome to Consulting Between Friends. I am your host, Michael Holmes Jr. In every city, there are certain people in charge of different things, such as the roads and property development in the city overall. The job I'm talking about is a mayor for a city, which requires someone who has leadership qualities. Right now in the United States, primary elections are going on this year. Some elections which people are running in are mayor, governor, and senator. In this episode, I will be interviewing a mayoral candidate in Washington, D.C. by the name of James Butler. You will learn why James is running for mayor and what he has to offer to the residents of Washington, D.C. Also, why someone should consider supporting him in the mayoral race. The topic is the 2022 primary election with a mayoral candidate, James Butler. We will return after a message from our sponsor. Everyone is always planning things, and advertising is needed to make it happen. So, if it's personal or business, let Pinpoint Designs and Images solve that problem. With Pinpoint Designs and Images LLC, you will receive quality work and professional service at a great price. The service that is offered: flyers, business cards, programs, invitations, photo books, ad booklets, and much more. Michael Holmes Jr., owner/principal designer of Pinpoint Designs and Images LLC. Contact me by email or social media. Email address is pinpointdesignsandImages@gmail.com, and Instagram Pinpoint Designs, and Facebook Pinpoint Designs and Images. We are back. Before the interview begins, I want to give you a background on James Butler. James is a Democratic political candidate who is running for mayor in Washington, D.C. James was born in Lorain, Ohio, and raised in a western suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. James is proud to live in Washington, D.C. over the past 20 years. In 2018, James finished second in the Democratic primary. James received a Juris Doctor while attending Ohio State University, Maurice College of Law. He also attended Kent State University and received a Bachelor's of Science degree. James has the experience to be a leader for the city of Washington, D.C. James has the ability to solve problems in all situations that a person needs to have as a mayor. James is a former civil rights lawyer who has worked on numerous cases that protects people's rights that affects the way they are treated. For instance, race, gender, sexual orientation, and transgender identity. James was also a former ANC commissioner, known as Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. Worked in different communities to reduce crime and violence by offering different solutions for the people in the community. James enjoys giving back to others who are unable to, volunteering for food banks in the community, and other nonprofit organizations as well. He has been a part of numerous organizations as a board member and has worked to preserve the national parks. James has devoted lots of time to assist with the homeless people in Washington, D.C., working to assist the homeless people and offer different opportunities to change their life. James has many other accomplishments he has received by working in the community of Washington, D.C. My guest today is James Butler. Now, welcome him to Consulting Between Friends.
Thank you, Michael Holmes Jr., and thank you for having me today. Greetings to you all. As was mentioned, I am James Butler, and I'm running to be the district's eighth mayor, Washington, D.C.'s eighth mayor. We've only had 8 mayors since home rule. It is truly my distinct privilege, pleasure, and honor to be here with you, Michael.
Thank you. I totally appreciate that. I'm glad I got to know you for a while, and I'm looking forward to this interview. So, how was your day?
Absolutely. My day has been really good. It's a quite a nice day here in the nation's capital. I started it off with a 7 mile run right around the capital area from my home, and just been a wonderful day working with my team, and I'm fired up. I'm fired up.
That's gonna be really good. I like what you have to say. So now we're about to start this interview. So the first thing I'd like you to do is go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into your political career.
Thank you so much again, Michael. I am child number 6 of 7, born to the late Reverend Harris Franklin Butler and Grace Butler. I'm originally from Lorain, Ohio, which is a western suburb of Cleveland. And I have been in the district for the last 20 plus years. By formal training, I am a civil rights lawyer. I'm also
Mhm.
a former elected commissioner in the Ward 5 part of the district of Columbia, where I served under the Councilman King and McDuffie. In addition to that, I was elected in 2016 after seeing a number of issues in my single member district with crime, with open air drug markets, and those sorts of things. I was working with some neighbors to try and discern who our local officials were. And I learned that there was really no one, there was someone elected, but no one was
Mhm.
doing anything. And so
Yes.
that's what really catapulted me into my first foray into politics. I came to DC, as I mentioned, about 20 years ago. I've got
Mhm.
a bachelor's of science from Kent State University and my Juris Doctorate from the Ohio State University. As a former civil rights lawyer, I have really sued state governments, city governments, law enforcement departments. I
Mm.
have done everything imaginable fighting for fairness and equality for all. And I will do it. And I've said this before until the day I die. It's something
Mhm.
fundamentally and very important to me because one thing I'm seeing is the inequality in our very own city with the gentrification. DC
Mhm.
was one of the first predominantly Black major U.S. cities in the country, and now the people getting pushed out of the city are predominantly Black people.
Mhm.
We have crime at a 20-year high. The perpetrators of these crimes are predominantly Black, and so are the victims. We've got a fairness and equality a crisis right here in the nation's capital, and that is why I'm running for mayor to bring new, fresh leadership that can change the city and put it right back on track where people can afford to live here, especially Black and brown people, and people can feel safe in their city, especially Black and brown people. I am a freedom fighter. I am a foot soldier for justice. And I want to take that fight to the Wilson building, which is our seat of government here.
Well, I like how you just explained yourself. And I also like that you mentioned you were a civil rights lawyer because that was really good because you got to know both sides of how people think and do things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I do like hearing about your education background. So to be a mayor, you have to be highly educated and you also have to know how to solve problems.
Well, yeah. Problem solver is a really big attributes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, well, now we're about to start with the first question. What is your main focus as mayor in DC for the people in the city?
So I have two top priorities for my first 100 days. The first is that we have a city that's safe because we know if our city is not safe, people are not happy in an unsafe city. So the reduction of crime, as I mentioned, we have a city that's reeling from violence and criminal activity. Not only the carjackings, but homicides are at a 20-year high. I'm deeply concerned and disturbed by this, and I know we need a mayor that's prepared from day one and a mayor with a plan to tackle the violence. In addition to that, a lot of our residents, in addition to being afraid for their safety in the city, cannot afford to live in our city and still do the necessary things that life requires, like food, healthcare, childcare, and those sorts of things. So I'm going to tackle the rampant gentrification that we've seen in our city. DC, of all the major cities that have faced gentrification, has displaced more Black and brown families than any other major city in the country. Those are facts. And any of the viewers can fact check me on this. So, my approach to crime is this. We know that a lot of these criminal acts are predominantly done by youthful offenders. And
Mhm.
a lot of this is they don't have things to do. So I believe we need to start operating like a world class city. And we're the nation's capital of America. We're a very
Mhm.
rich city with a $20 billion budget to allocate.
Mhm.
That's more than many states have. And the reality is this: we can make sure that our rec centers, our 24-hour rec centers that operates as resource centers, so that young adults can go there if they're in need. That single parents can go there. We need to ensure that things like the Marion Barry Summer Youth Program is a year-round program where students can get work study credit for it and they can make a minimum wage. Those are the things, the hard stuff in democracy that we must focus on doing to save our youth before they get into problems. But at the same time, as a mayor of this great city, I understand that it's extremely important and critical that I get people home alive.
Mhm.
Right now, we have an understaffed, overburdened, overworked police force with very, very low morale. We're doing 1.1 million hours of overtime with our present police force. That equates, the money we're spending in overtime equates to paying an additional 500 police officers. It's not
Mhm.
fair to the residents of the district that we have an overworked, overburdened, low morale police force that some are working when they're sick with mental health crises and the like. What we must do is ensure that we hire additional officers. What that does is it allows us to cover larger swaths of the city to keep our residents out of harm's way or have an officer there when they need them. In addition, it speeds up our response times. It heightens the morale of the police force that is currently being overworked.
Mhm.
Not going to just be reckless with hiring these officers. We're going to get well trained, community based police officers from our own neighborhoods, from our own high schools and schools to ensure that these are good police officers that really have the back of the community. And I can guarantee you the community also will have their back. And I will be one of the first mayors in a long time that the police force understands that I have their back. That's how we're going to make DC one of the safest cities in America. In addition to that, what we must do in the realm of affordable housing, we must ensure that DC has rent control. We have it, but right now it doesn't apply to any place built post 1976 or after 1976. We must make sure that it covers all dwelling places so that everyone can afford to live here and thrive. In addition to that, we will ensure that we change the way we calculate who qualifies for affordable housing. Right now, we use the formula called AMI or MFI. They're used interchangeably. That's area median income or median family income. And it's a regional formula, and it takes into account the counties that DC is surrounded by. That's bad because we're surrounded by some of the richest counties in Maryland and in Virginia. In America, some of those are the richest counties. The reality is it artificially inflates what's affordable actually in DC. I will abort that formula and I will use HUD's formula to ensure that we bring real affordable housing that's deeply affordable. In addition to that, I will ensure that we go into the city's own housing stock and actually
Mhm.
provide deeply affordable housing. DC owns housing and buildings and structures. I will ensure that some of that is built out so that we can house not only people that need deeply affordable housing, but those that are affected with our homelessness crises. Safety and affordability to live in our city, my first two priorities.
Well, I like how you broke everything down. You had a lot that you basically said, but you explained it very well, and I appreciate that.
Thank
And
you.
one thing, what I
You're
also
welcome.
realized, you mentioned about safety, and you mentioned about the youth, and you mentioned about housing. And actually, those are some issues we are going to tackle on in this interview. So, since you mentioned about the youth,
Excellent.
I'm about to go ahead and prolong to the question I came up with about that, and then we're going to go from there because I like how you explained everything. So, it's going to sound very good. What ideas do you have to influence the youth to have a positive outcome of life?
Well, I think first it starts with making sure our youth has their needs met. A lot of times we discount the things that our young people are going through.
Mhm.
And sometimes and frequently these days, we see a young person, he or she may take or they may take their own life. Is a mental health crisis in this country amongst our youth that remains unaddressed. We will ensure that our schools have mental, behavioral, and addiction health crises counselors and an apparatus that is very robust, one of the most robust in the nation, in our schools, in our middle schools, in our elementary schools, and certainly in our high schools. We will ensure that they have those. We will ensure that there are safe passage to and from schools, that those students that are facing bullies no longer have to fear that. They can get back and forth to school, believing that they can learn and be better. We know that they can. We have a lot of bright young people, but if they're
Mhm.
not making it to school or being fearful of going to school, they're not going to learn and they're not going to be successful. We're going to ensure that they're getting to our schools. We're going to ensure that while they're in schools, if there's a crisis, a familial crisis, that they know who they can go to and who they can trust. Because we know that trust is one of the biggest
Mhm.
components of someone sharing with you what they're going through, whether that's a mental behavioral health addiction thing, or whether it's an abuse issue at home. We're going to make sure that we have one of the most robust wraparound services for all of that and resource places that our young people can go to in our schools so that they can go there, learn, and thrive, and that they can be the most competitive in the nation.
I agree with you say because really it starts when you're young. That's how some crimes are. And if you have different programs in place, I agree that it would help quite a few of them for they don't have to turn down the wrong road. And the policies that you just mentioned,
Absolutely.
I agree that those are good things that should work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Gun violence has become a norm everywhere. How would you slow down the violence in the city?
Thank you, Michael. One thing that I know, and I mentioned a little bit of this early on, we need to make sure that our youth have things to do to keep
Mhm.
out of trouble and to believe that they have a path forward to be successful. Part of that includes making sure that our rec centers are operating 24-hour days a day as safe passages and resource centers for those youth that fall into issues where they can go to. These will be, they'll have security apparatus around them, but to ensure that the youth are safe there, they will also be a place for single parents, moms, and dads to get, resources that they need if that falls into the hands or the line of groceries or, economic type of resources. We'll have
Mhm.
that stuff for them available, whether it's a mom, single mom needing Pampers or those sorts of things for kids. We need a place where people can feel they can go to, especially when we're in certain hours of the day where people might not have those resources from our
Mhm.
city that should be available. We need to start operating like a world class center, and we will under my mayoral team. But in addition, I know that the gun violence has affected a lot of people that have been in the city for quite some time, and their families have been here for multiple generations, and they haven't seen it like this. Critically important to me as mayor of this great city is to ensure that I get each resident home feeling that they're safe and they get home alive. So we know that there are a lot of ghost guns. We will partner with a task force to work with our ATF and with our other federal and partners to ensure that ghost guns are a thing of the past. In addition to that, we have a gun recovery unit. We will form a special interdiction unit to work in conjunction with our gun recovery unit to ensure that guns from Maryland and Virginia and any other
Mhm.
state that are coming into the district where someone would do us harm, that those guns are seized through this special task force that will obtain information on the illegality of these guns coming in. They will seize those guns before they're used to commit a crime. That's extremely important for us. In addition to those extreme strategies with our law enforcement, we will continue to use what we've already been doing, and that's violence interrupters to try and work to intercept crime or prevent crime before it happens. But we know that through violence interruption, it hasn't been able to slow the numbers down as quickly as we would like to have seen. So it's important for us to make sure that we have a public safety apparatus that consists of police officers that are intercepting these illegal guns so that if we can get one, two, three, 100, 1,000 illegal guns off the street, we're potentially saving lives there. And that's what we will do.
Well, I like how you explain that, and I heard you mention ghost guns. Do you mind explaining what that
Mhm.
is?
Yeah, sure. Ghost guns are like any other gun. They operate, they can kill like a real gun, et cetera, et cetera. It's the only thing is when you buy a gun lawfully today, you're required to take it through processes where it's verified, it has a serial number. And in case that gun's used for everything, each gun has essentially its own fingerprint. They can go back
Mhm.
and they do a ballistics test and they can say, hey, this bullet goes to this gun because they've
Yes.
done a ballistics test. Now, the problem with a ghost gun is it's basically a kit gun. It's a real gun. You can buy them off of the internet. Unfortunately, the frames and components, and people are buying these things and they're committing acts of violence and murders with these things. They are committing homicides, and many people are losing their lives throughout the country. We need to ensure that this type of gun is illegalized, that the components are legalized. And we will not stop working with our federal government, our federal partners, including the ATF, until we accomplish this. It's critically important that these things become a thing of the past because they are ruining our country, our city, our families, and literally affecting people's lives for generations to come. When kids grow up without a mom or a dad, it's the thought is nauseating how high the numbers have risen of people losing their lives to ghost guns in this city. I will fight it with all vigor. I will fight it with all the resources I have, and I will ensure that it is literally ghost guns are a thing of the past.
Well, I like how you explain yourself about ghost guns because I actually learned something and I did not know about that. And I bet some of my viewers did not know that either. But you did very good in
Yeah,
explaining that. And I also like what you would do for the city to get the ghost guns out as well.
thank you.
With all the police killings in America that affects African Americans, what would you do to protect the African Americans in the community?
Well, one, I think we need to start with making sure that our police officers that we're hiring from our very own community, high schools, and neighborhoods. Because sometimes when we bring people from the Midwest or the South and they don't look like the people that they're policing in the neighborhoods, or they're not familiar with the people they're policing, we see violence happen. And that's frequently throughout the country. It works that way. So I think we need to start there. I also think we need to hold bad police officers accountable. The only one running for mayor that has actually sued bad police officers in federal court. I'm the only one running for mayor that has actually sued state governments and city governments and counties for bad policing. And I've done that all over the country because I believe that any act of injustice to one is an injustice to all. I truly do. And so I will continue to fight for fairness and equality as mayor of the city because it is a fundamental belief to me, fairness and equality. It's essentially all I've done my entire life. And so, one, holding bad police officers accountable, ensuring that we reduce the scope of qualified immunity when a police officer is charged so that they can't hide behind the law and shield themselves with the law. That if you commit murder, we're going to charge you with murder in our
Mhm.
city. Rest assured. So once you send that message out to police officers, and I agree that the vast majorities of police officers are probably good, but we
Mhm.
do have
Correct.
some bad actors. And when we get bad actors, we need to be sure that they're punished accordingly. As mayor of this city, and I can assure you that I will punish bad police officers accordingly. They will not hide behind the law of qualified immunity, and that we will focus on hiring community based police officers, ensuring that we get them from our high schools, our own cadet program, and ensuring that the police that police the communities that they, one, can afford to live in those communities and they know the communities that they're policing.
I like how you said that. That does make sense because actually, if you do have police come from different communities where the people are known to be, they know how the community is, and they have a good idea of what to suspect instead of people who have not been here
Exactly.
before.
Yep. I really believe that.
What are your plans to assist in slowing down Black on Black crime?
Well, I will tell you, I never like to use the term black on black because it's violence. I think
Okay.
what we refer to loosely as black on black crime, the crime as that a white person will perpetrate against a white person. It's about the same percentage nationwide,
Okay.
Latino and Latino, et cetera, et cetera. And I've looked at the Bureau of Crime Statistics that's released by the FBI, and I noticed percentage-wise those numbers are equally the same. But one thing I will say that we're a small demographic of the country, and we can't afford to allow Black people to perpetrate crimes against people that look like themselves. And so that's extremely important. For me, it's about making people see the value in themselves. Because if I see you, Michael, and I see
Okay.
you and me, I don't want to
Mhm.
kill you. I don't
Correct.
want to kill you. Nothing about me seeing you makes me angry. And sometimes I think you have a lot of youth that, these petty beefs happen and they get angry with the person
Mhm.
and they don't know how to resolve it. It comes down to resources and education.
Correct.
If you give a person resources and education, their morale and feelings about themselves, their esteem goes up,
Mm-hmm.
and then they no longer view you as an antagonist because they understand their value and self-worth. Hopeless people do hopeless things. So we
Mm-hmm.
can ensure, and we will, as mayor of the city, that there are a robust job apparatus with the Department of Employment Service that's focusing predominantly on Black men. We will also focus on the loitering that happens in our city. We know that people loiter for, typically for main reasons. They're in an overcrowded housing situation. They don't have adequate economic resources. It may be addiction or behavioral health issues, or one of those, or a combination of all four. If we can go to them, and we will with our task force, and check to see what their needs are, we can ensure that there's less of the loitering. And we know that a lot of the loitering, we got a lot of petty criminal acts that become
Mm-hmm.
major criminal acts and homicides that are birthed out of that. Illegal
Mm-hmm.
guns, drugs, and so on. We're going to make sure that we focus on the people that need the resources most, Black men that are fall in the bottom quarter of earners of income in our city, predominantly in the southeast portion of our city. That's extremely important. So that we know, if we can do that and we can get them when they're young in school, that Black men with that education and the resources, the esteem will go up. You'll no longer feel hopeless, and you'll no longer do hopeless things. But that's what we're going to do to reduce what you referred to as crime that's perpetrated by a Black person on another Black person. It's all too frequently, but we got to restore hope. If I were to sum it up, I will restore hope to our community. I will restore hope.
Well, I like how you just summed it up, and I do agree that it does take hope and does take good people with good values that can help the person. Now, what I also did like when you mentioned that, you mentioned about statistics, like with the different races, you mentioned about Latinos and all that. Do you mind explaining a little bit of statistics since you mentioned it?
Yeah. So, what I was essentially trying to explain in a nutshell, well, what we call Black on Black crime, frequently a Black person has a higher probability of committing a crime against another Black person. That could be a proximity thing, it could be a relationship thing. If you look at the average Black person, probably has more Black associates than whites, et cetera, et cetera. So if something
Mhm.
happens, an argument or whatever, it's probably more probable than not that you're going to kill someone if you were to engage in a homicide that looks more like you. But the same is true. When we look at the numbers of white on white crime, it literally looks the same. The percentage is almost the same. I think it's like 20%. If you're a white person, you commit a homicide, it's going to be against another white person. Latino, the probability is greater that you're going to commit a crime against another Latino, and so on and so on. So it really, when I hear Black on Black, I think crime. It's just crime. And
Mhm.
almost the reason why I avoid the term Black on Black, it almost looks like, well, we're the only one with this problem as a
Mhm.
race, when every race has that problem. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So
Uh-huh.
it's a problem that transcends the race, no matter who it is. But one thing I will say is, we as Black people in this country have got to do better, since that's what we're talking about, Black people. In addition to that, we know our numbers in the population in America are small, not in the
Mhm.
world. Black people, we're close to the majority in the world, but we're not the majority in America. And
Correct.
so we can't afford to have homicides and be victimized by each other.
Mhm. I do agree with that. I like how you explain that. I like how you wrap it all up as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. With the economic problems in America, how would you offer job opportunities to people in DC?
Well, that's a very good question. I am one of the few reparationists in the country. I am moving for reparations for Black descendants of slavery in this country, in this particular city. We will be the first major U.S. city that has proffered reparations for those residents that can prove that they are Black descendants of slavery. That would mean some small cash payments, job opportunities, tax abatements, and so on. You are because I don't want to digress too much, but the viewers can find more on my webpage at butler the number 4dc.com. But what I will do as far as our DOES, or Department of Employment Services, I will, as your mayor, increase the number of job opportunities for Black and Brown people. And that will require me to double the size of DOES to ensure that we have not only the resources, but we also have the outreach capacity to make sure that we know, because what good is a resource if the people don't know about it, you know?
That is
So
true.
we'll only double the size of the department, but make sure that we double, triple up on the size of the outreach so that people can ensure that we can ensure that the people know about the jobs we're going to offer. That we know will focus on Black men, Black women, and which typically in DC, we know the average income of a Black person is a fraction of that of a white person in the city. So I'm not excluding white people when I talk about jobs, but let's just face it, there is an income disparity on DC. DC is like a rich city. You almost have to, yeah, I say you almost have to be a multimillionaire to live here. I'm not, just so the viewers know that. It's ironic that I'm running for mayor of the city, but I mean, it really is. Houses are selling for, I mean, the average price of a home here, this is the average, meaning right in the center, is $500,000. It's not unusual to see houses in most of the city around $1 million.
Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
it really isn't. Plus, so it's a very rich city now, but we also have a swath of people that have been here for a while that live in generational homes that don't have that kind of money or income and are facing unemployment. We have one of the highest unemployment rates amongst Black people of any city in the country. So it's
Mm.
critically important for me when I stay along the lines of what I've devoted my life to, fairness and equality. I'm going to fight for those people that are being left behind.
Well, I totally agree with that. I like the facts that you stated in the city about people with unemployment and then a different race gap as well. That
Yeah,
is very interesting.
yeah.
What has prepared you to be the next mayor of DC?
Thank you for the question. I have lived a life where I've run several businesses. I have gotten to know how governments work. I have had, I would say, the good fortune suing a number of state governments where I've
Mm.
literally had to learn the structure of the legislative bodies, how these rules and laws are promulgated. I have had the fortune of suing counties all over the country for issues of civil rights. And I've gotten to learn how governments work in that way for cities, police departments, sheriff departments, in addition to being elected by the people to serve as a commissioner in this city in my single member district. In 2016, I was elected by a majority of people, defeating the chairman of my commission in Ward 5 here. And I got to see government right up close and see where all the fault lines and issues lie. I believe I'm the only candidate running for mayor that has actually run businesses in the private sector, created jobs, have sued city governments, have sued counties, have sued sheriff departments, have sued municipalities. So that has allowed me to understand the structure. I know where the fault lines lie. I know how governments work. And I believe that that suits me to run this as the eighth mayor of the city. I look at my experience for the past several mayors that I would bring to office, and I believe my experience is by far and away way more than any of my predecessors would have had prior to coming in office. And I'm prepared to lead this great city in over the next 8 years.
Well, I like how you just say you had a different background than most people who are elected mayor, because that is really interesting. And I know some of my viewers will be interested in that as well. This going to be a little different. Since I heard you keep mentioning about the civil rights, do you mind explaining what type of work you really did with that for the few years?
Yeah. So civil rights work is where someone's discriminated against on racial injustice. It could be, uh, religious injustice. It could be sexual injustice, whether they're man or a woman. It could be perceived sexual orientation, whether they're gay or LGBTQIA. It could be on national origin, or it could be because of the color of their skin, which is, as people say, race or color. It could be either of those things. So
Mhm,
it could be a combination of those too. And so anytime that happens in the workplace, anytime it happens it's perpetuated by a state government, a city government, a county government, it's unlawful. And
mhm,
anytime it disparately affects someone who the law is meant to be equally applied to, that's a civil rights issue, and that someone
yes.
needs to fight for that person's rights. It could be when someone's applying for a house, they don't get accepted to that housing, or because they're black or brown, or because they're Latino. I mean, it's important that in any and all aspects of our life, that people are treated the same. Whenever they're not treated the same, that's typically a civil rights violation.
Mhm. Well, I like how you explain that. What motivates you to accomplish any of your goals in life?
Well, I don't like failure. I'm a runner, as I said at the beginning of this. I've been an athlete most of my life. I've ran track. I've ran track at an amateur level. I've wrestled. I've done a lot of stuff sports wise in my life. I
Mhm.
sit here at 47 years old. I'll be this year. I'm still very athletic, as even as a maturing adult. I push myself. It motivates me. I mean, I am motivated to drive myself forward. If I can have success for someone that's not me by pushing and fighting for someone that might not be able to fight for themselves, that's the gratification that I need in life. I say running for public office is almost like a calling for me,
Mhm.
in the sense that it's a bit of a spiritual journey. This one has been that you're working and fighting for people that might not be able to stand up or fight for themselves. And that to me is encouraging, the possibility of being able to fight for someone, to get someone a modicum of justice, to get someone life on the right track, to make people or allow people to have better jobs, to allow people to be safe in their city. That's all motivating to me.
Well, I like how you just say that you're being motivated by other people, and I also like what you do motivates you as well. And I heard you mention that you enjoy exercising, and I
I
also
do.
remember you saying that you run a lot. So that guess that pumps up your mind to start your day,
It
correct?
does. It's really good. I've been running for over 30 years. I run about anywhere from 6 to 8 miles on most days. And for me, it's just one. It really is my own personal time. It has allowed me to focus when I run. And believe it or not, and I think most people would agree, when I'm running through barriers. I'm running through
Mhm.
life barriers, and I'm really conquering a whole lot when I run. That allows me to run through the challenges of the day and those things that affect me in life. And I think that will suit me for being an extraordinarily good mayor as well.
Correct. How would you stay focused if a major event happens in DC? Also, how will you protect the people in the city?
Yes, look, it's not if a major event happens, it's when. And any good leader understands a city, especially like the District of Columbia, where the nation's capital of America, and volatile things that happen, it will happen to our infrastructure. It will happen in the form of violence. And I think the best approach. And the approach that I will take is be proactive, not reactive. Good leaders are proactive. I have moved for embellishing our 911 call center where our wait times are a lot shorter. I have moved to work with our federal partners to ensure that we have plans to get our residents out of harm's way as quickly as possible, that our links to our federal government, including Congress, are not fettered with, but we have direct access to the US Congress, that we have direct access to the White House, that there's emergency preparedness in place, not just for first responders, but emergency preparedness that's understood and appreciated by every resident of the district. That requires us to do outreach and training for every resident of the district, that if an incident occurs, this is how you act, this is how you react. That our cell phone system is linked with our emergency system so that we can get notices out to residents very quickly, and that those notices are clear so that people that are within our deaf and blind community understand how they can get their messages as well. So those people that need ADA compliance, apparatus to ensure that they are moved to safety quickly, that those things can also be addressed as well. I have thought about these things very deeply over the last several years, and I am moving, and I have actually toured and intimately toured our 911 response centers. And I have been informed by the frontline workers on where the issues lie. And I can assure every resident of the district that we will correct those. We will be the most proactive mayoralty that DC has ever seen, and not ever reactive to an emergency crisis response.
Well, you gave a good explanation on how would you actually be there for the people of DC and your administration as well.
Thank you.
As low income is a problem in metropolitan cities, what services would you offer to assist for the people in DC?
Well, we have to ensure that people that need housing vouchers first are getting vouchers that they can afford to live in our city. Right now, we know those vouchers for low income individuals are being cut. I will restore those vouchers to make sure, first, that they're getting. Those individuals that receive WIC and TANF, we know that it's not enough. We need to ensure that we double up on WIC and TANF for those individuals that are deserving and do receive those things. Now, we don't want to help, keep people on it forever, but our job as mayor of this city, when people need it, it's to give them a hand up, not a handout. I don't look at it as a handout, because we all in life have situations where we need help. Every single one of us. And good mayors also operate with a good mind, but also equally a good heart. So it's important for our leaders to have compassion and to know that people need resources. So the housing vouchers, we will double up on those. TANF, WIC, those sorts of things where people need it, we will ensure that they have it. DC's one of the richest cities in the country with a $20 billion budget, and we have the resources to do it. And from day one, I will ensure that people that need it and are deserving of it get it.
I like how you explain that. And there are things that you mentioned about the low income. I do know there's a lot of bus services there, and then also subway trains. But some people might don't have the funds to get to where they work sometimes, which that does happen. So is there a way that you can help those people out if they get in that situation?
I'm glad you asked. I am one of the few mayoral candidates of a major US city. And I've said this at debates. It's on my website at butler4dc.com. I'm moving for an entirely free metro system, both land buses and rail. And we will pay for it by taxing, or essentially raising the fare just ever so slightly of people that come from Maryland, Virginia, or any other state. Because the reality is, we have one of the biggest free museum systems the Smithsonian system in the country. People,
Mhm.
millions of people come from all over the country and the world and place a burden on our infrastructure. Now, we don't have, highway tolls or anything like that, like Maryland or Virginia has. So what we can do is put essentially a toll on those people that are coming in and placing an undue burden on our infrastructure by checking out our museums or coming into the district on a daily basis. We'll raise it just slightly. That will pay for everyone that is a district resident to ride for free.
That sounds like a good plan.
I think it's an awesome plan. I think it's one of the best plans in the country, and I'd love the opportunity to roll this thing out, and we will.
Mhm. What are some of the volunteerism you enjoy in the community? What projects have you worked on in different communities?
I really enjoy working to really help quell hunger in our city, and I've done a lot of that in that space. I am quelling hunger and homelessness. And I know all the viewers are aware that those two run hand in hand. And
Mhm.
so that's something I really enjoy. I've worked in the race against child hunger with the FDA. I sit on the board. I chair the board of the Naturally Ivy Foundation for the Homeless. I bring food nearly weekly to senior homes around the city, different ones. A lot of this stuff is donated to me in a charitable way. This is stuff that, I don't have the news cameras out doing, but stuff that I know people need. Our seniors, sometimes they're in grocery stores, and the reality is they're choosing between food and medicine. That's a hard thing for me to watch. My mother is a
Mhm.
senior, and I know sometimes, when your major sources of income are is slowed down, it's not easy. It's just
Mhm.
not an easy thing. And so for me to watch that is heart wrenching. And as a mayor of this city, as an individual, I've worked to really and have really enthusiastically enjoyed working in those spaces of providing food, and then those spaces of working to eradicate chronic homelessness. And I'm looking forward to doing more of that as the district's next mayor.
Well, I like how you explain that you like volunteering in the community, because volunteering in the community
Thank
is
you.
really good because that's a way for people get to know the public officials who are running and people who are in
Absolutely.
office. Because some people do not
Absolutely.
know that at all. So that's one way
Absolutely
they
right.
can learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, we have come down to the end of this interview. Before we go, I know since you are running for office that it takes campaign dollars. If you would like to let people know how to donate to your campaign and participate if they would like to, and how to contact you as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Again, thank you so much for having me. It really is one of the greatest honors of my life to be able to run for mayor and for people like you to reach out to me to give me the spotlight to share my vision for the city as the city's next and eighth mayor. And thank you to all of the viewers. I know time is one of the most important things or commodities in this world. For you to give me your time and to listen to this interview, I can't say enough thanks you. So thank you very much. You all can learn more about my campaign at Butler, that's Butler, just like a servant, the number 4dc.com. That's Butler, the number 4dc.com. You can see the little blue donate tab right at the top of the page, and you can give any amount of money up to $2,000. We're traditional campaigns, so your dollars really count. We're going to be using mailers, sending out mailers over the next couple weeks. Those cost thousands and tens of thousands of dollars. So I really could use the support. I promise I won't let you down. I will be one of the most transformational mayors in DC history. I can promise you that. I'm moving for reparations, free metro system. I'm moving to make DC one of the safest cities in America, and I will. You can follow me on Twitter at the at symbol James Butler for DC.com. My Instagram handle is at Butler for DC. So it's just like the beginning of my website at Butler for DC. And you can find me similarly situated at Butler for DC on Facebook. I'm active on all three platforms. Again, thank you to all the viewers. Thank you, Michael. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you. And I like how you go ahead and explain that as well. People can contact you and get involved in the campaign if they would like to, who lives in DC area. One other question I would like to go ahead and ask you at the very end, because since you are running for mayor, this is also primary season and midterm season, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So,
Yes.
how do you feel right now about the primary season and midterm season right now we're about to face?
So let me just, and I should thank you for reminding me. My primary is June 21st, so we've got about 40 days or so till our primary. So I need you all support when you can. ASAP is what I want to say directly. The midterms, I am very concerned for Democrats across the country regarding midterms. I would have liked to see Democrats do a little bit more than the January 6th inquiry. I would have liked them to see us abolish the filibuster, and I think we could have been more progressive. But we've got some work to do. I mean, I know you all see what's happening with women's rights, abortion, and those sorts of things. It matters who you have elected. It matters who you have on our Supreme Court. And if we lose midterms, we're going to have a lot of problems to look out for. I mean, we're going to have a president that could be similarly crippled like Obama was his second term. So, if we lose the Senate and we lose the House, which I'm concerned about, it's going to really affect the landscape of what we can accomplish in President Biden's last 2 years. So get out and vote, folks. Be active, engage. Your vote matters. I don't ever want to hear any of you say your vote doesn't matter, because it does. Run for office. It matters. It matters. Get out there, get engaged. Tell your friends and family to get engaged. If they're not engaged, sign someone up to vote if you know they're not registered to vote. These things matter. They deeply matter for the preservation of our democracy. They matter. And you matter to me.
Well, I like how you explain that as well. And all the viewers out there, I hope you enjoy learning today about James Butler, who is running for mayor in DC. With this information and this interview, I hope this gave y'all some good information about him. And if you decide to vote for him, now you know more about him as well. James Butler, I'd like to say thank you for being a guest on Consulting Between Friends podcast.
Michael Holmes, it's truly been my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me. God continue to bless you.
Thank you. After a short break, we will return. In closing, I hope the listeners enjoyed the interview with the mayoral candidate, James Butler, for Washington, D.C. James has offered a lot of information and explained himself very well on why he wants to be mayor. Also, he has mentioned what motivates him to accomplish any of his goals, as well his background working in the community for Washington, D.C. I am glad I had the opportunity to interview James Butler and learn about his career. One last thing, remember to support Black business owners, and one way to stay focused with yourself is to have hope that it can happen. What's going on in the news? On May 14th, 2022, a mass shooting took place in Buffalo, New York, at a supermarket called Tops. The gunman killed 10 black people and injured 2 white people. The gunman was a young 18-year-old white man. The gunman killed only black people at the supermarket. This was his intentions in the first place. This young white man planned this whole mass shooting for months and had visited the store before causing this incident. He had this planned, all mapped out, and drove 200 miles where a heavy population of black people live. The gunman had a mindset of white supremacy thoughts and beliefs that black people was the enemy. After hearing about this mass shooting, I was completely terrified for my life. I am a black man who is starting to not feel safe around my surroundings. As a black person, this incident has terrified us, and we wonder why this has to happen in this day and age. This was definitely a hate crime towards black people. We all now have to look how the world sees hate and discrimination, as well find a solution for the problem. You can click the links about a mass shooting at a supermarket in the podcast notes under What's Going On in the News. Thank you for listening to Consulting Between Friends. This podcast is available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts, as well other platforms that are available. So like and subscribe. Need to contact us and leave us a comment? You can find us on Instagram at consulting the letter B friends. Once again, consulting B friends. An email address is consulting the letter B friends at gmail.com. Once again, consulting B friends at gmail.com. Consulting Between Friends now has a way for listeners to share their feedback about the podcast. The listeners can now share their feedback on Discord. The link will be available in the podcast notes and on the podcast website. Consulting Between Friends. Thanks to everyone for making this possible. The host, Michael Holmes Jr., the producer and content creator, Michael Holmes Jr., the artwork cover, Michael Holmes Jr., original music, a DJ named Slash, special guest, James Butler, Mayoral candidate for Washington, D.C., content distributor, My Producer Podcasts.